additional practice.
So we are making progress. What I can only add is that with regard to this particular issue of
LGBTI, it has already been criminalized.
Maybe the language is not that clear. And so that's why I have been indicating that this House can propose requisite amendment. Yes, so that we don't have to go into all this. Now, with regard to human rights, you see, Honorable Chair, the Honorable Savoka is mixing the two things. The human right, the act has been criminalized. Nobody will go protecting or fighting for that against Ghanaian values in Ghana, right? If lesbians are not covered, we should cover them, right? But we're talking about the human rights, the other human right dimensions that get triggered if people are exposed, stigmatized, and discriminated. That is the point. So those other clusters of human rights that get entangled as a result of we stigmatizing and discriminating against LGBTI persons is what I am concerned. And I've said freedom of expression, movement, association, and all those things, including other persons who sympathize and empathize with them. That is the position.
Point made. Honorable Member, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have two short questions to ask. Chairman, the presenter cited Article 28 of the African Charter during your presentation. And when I get that article, it enjoins every individual to promote, safeguard, and reinforce mutual respect and tolerance. Chairman, I want to be educated. How would this bill, in its form, when passed, will make Ghana be infringing upon that article? That's my first.
He had already made a point that to the extent that we discriminate against the LGBTQ community, then we are intolerant to them, towards them.
Chairman, so that's my first question to you.
He's already made his point.
And the second.
No, Chairman, with all due respect, I think the honorable member has a valid question. I think from the presentation, we are all coming to a realization that some activities of the LGBTQ are already an offense within the meaning of Section 104 of the Criminal Offences Act, 1960, Act 29. However, if the scope will be expanded, we have to look at the existing law and do the appropriate amendment to expand the scope. And he is asking a question that you make a reference to Article 28 of the Charter. Now, in view of the fact that the activities are already, some are already prescribed, how does that make us as a country intolerance in view of that Chapter 28? Is that not the impulse of your question? Thank you very much.
Please note it down. Are you done? Okay, go ahead.
Chairman, it appears that from what you are hearing on social media, that this bill is only targeting LGBTQ community, which is a minority community in society. Chairman, I want to propose to CHRAJ, if this committee decides to bring all the sexual offenses in Ghana, in our statutes, to consolidate it into one act, so that this LGBT will only be a chapter or a section, would that allow Ghana to be within the SDGs? Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, what he's saying is that he said that because if we discriminate against LGBT community, we will be offending the SDG some way. And I'm asking, yes, it appears because the bill is providing for only LGBT community. So my question is, if we bring all other sexual offenses law in Ghana to consolidate them into one sexual offences act, for example, in Ghana, would that be in form of the SDG or would it be offending the SDG? Thank you.
Okay. Honorable. Wait, Honorable.
Alaji Bejira.
Honorable Bejira, you are only a friend for today. You are not a member, so but I'll allow you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. A friend of a committee is also a member of Parliament. Chair, the recommendation to your committee by CHRAJ, if you look at the recommendation, it states that the Commission therefore recommends an extensive national debate as well as constructive engagement with the LGBT community and all relevant stakeholders will provide a better national response on this matter, as opposed to current attempt of criminalization through bill. I heard the CHRAJ man saying that they're neither for or against, but their recommendations clearly state that they're against the bill. I want to find out from the CHRAJ man. He says that engagement...
You omit the fact that it clearly shows they are against our life.
It's stated here.
Because I have
in their recommendation, Chair.
Yes. They are just prompting us as a body to be careful of this clause and this clause.
So let me ask my question now. Honorable Chair, just to find out from them whether we have LGBTQ plus community in Ghana. Do we have them?
You want them to answer this question? If you don't have them, we will not be sitting here.
Because he mentioned that our section 109 of section 104 of the Criminal Offences Act criminalize it. If we criminalize this and we still have that community in Ghana.
Honorable Bejira, do we have armed robbery in Ghana? Well, we have criminalized it. So when they are here, Honorable Gaga.
Chairman, thank you. I shouldn't be asking the commissioner questions because he's my elder brother, but it's part of our work, so I will do my job. Yes. No, I won't. Yes, so, Commissioner, you stated in your presentation that the Committee on Economic, Social, Cultural Rights has included sexual orientation. Yes, in this definition of human rights, and that Ghana is signatory. Right. Comment. Good. To the covenant, yes. Now, you also again cited Article 33(5) of the Constitution, where rights that are not specifically mentioned must be taken account of in determining what constitutes a right under our Constitution. But in light of Article 75, because I'm not too sure whether our ratification of what the Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights did by way of a definition of sexual orientation as a right has been domesticated. Point is, ratification is an executive act, but in light of Article 75, on our obligations as a state, if we really want to have, whatever we do at the level of the executive binding, concrete steps must be taken to either amend this constitution or enact a law which would incorporate that for purposes of having a binding effect on our country as a state within the Committee of Nations. Would you in the circumstances, still maintain that we treat the act of ratification at the level of the Committee on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights. That's a body of the UN. I'm saying that that is a body, one of the organs of the UN. So would you still insist, as the body that is responsible for human rights, that we respect the definition that has now been given, as in equating sexual orientation here as a human right? Should we accept same, even though we haven't taken steps to give full recognition to that definition of a right in our constitution, because mention is not made of sexual orientation as a right. It is not also a right even under the Universal Charter on Human Rights. The African Charter on People's Rights is not mentioned specifically.
Honorable, the import of your question, if you can wind up.
It's very clear in light of Article
what the import of the question? What is the import?
How CHRAJ wants us to treat that particular
sexual values?
Yes, and
whether it's a human right or not. Okay.
In light of Article 75.
Okay. Right.
That is the first issue. Second, Commissioner also
brevity, please.
Cite Resolution 275, which talks about non-violence against sexual minorities. And then he said this was adopted in 2014 by the African Union. No, I just wanted to draw African Commission on Human Rights. Yes, I just wanted to draw attention to what this bill actually seeks to do. That if you look at the bill, clause 22 is on prohibition of extrajudicial treatment, where, in fact, what this resolution seeks to achieve has actually been criminalized. So that if you
it's being proposed to be criminalized.
Yes. Well, I said the bill, Chairman, with due respect. Right. Yes. Yes. So yes. Yes.
Right.
Once it's a bill, it means that everything is in the form of a proposal.
Exactly.
It's not an act yet.
Right.
Yes. So this has actually been criminalized.
It's being proposed to be criminalized.
Well, Chairman, it's a bill. So once I say clause, I think there's clarity to the matter. Yes. So would you say this is even progressive? Because this seeks to give meaning to Resolution 278, so that if you visit violence on somebody suspected to be a gay, a member of the LGBTQ community, you are the one who would be at the receiving end of the law.
Honorable Asante Watson, this was the last one, but I saw you raise your hand and you were late. Are you sure you're not going to repeat the questions that have been asked already? You have the opportunity.
Thank you, Chairman. I wouldn't know whether I will be repeating the question because you said I'm even late. But thank you for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Chairman, I have a difficulty when my senior from the CHRAJ said that there is a link between criminalizing the LGBTQ activities to the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. My suggestion is that when we ask for the explanation to that, it wasn't convincing enough, and that there's no way the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goal can take everybody along. You go to, yes, it's not possible. It is not possible. Because you go to our prisons, you have certain syndicated groups, like armed robbers. They did robbery, they came together to do some activities which have put them there. Are we saying that, like my colleague just asked, we will be able to, as it were, justify what they have done, and because of the SDGs, we have to, as it were, exonerate them or what? It's an independent something. If you're making a very good case, make your case and leave the SDGs out. I don't think the explanation that you gave was coherent enough. Thank you.
Sir, please, I will allow you, if you have some comments, and conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Let me start with the last questioner. You see, I would advise this committee, because of the nature of the functions you perform, constitutional, legal, and parliamentary affairs, you are at the pivot of the implementation of the SDGs and holding government accountable for its implementation. And one key principle underlying the whole implementation of the SDGs is leaving no one behind. And each goal are aspirations. The goals are aspirational. And so, for the honorable members to say that we have not made our case because, when you take the example of prisoners, if the prisoners have gone to fair trial, there's nothing, you would have met the goal. Two, if you are treating the prisoners with humanity in terms of giving them food and other rations which are adequate to preserve them in prison, you would have met SDGs. So the SDGs are so vital that this committee, I am prepared, the Commission is prepared to come and we engage on the human rights dimensions of the SDGs, so that we don't see them only as political aspirations, because they are all for every, in fact, there's a mapping that has been made up by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, mapping every SDG to a human rights covenant or treaty, and it's 98% compliance. So for each goal, there's a cluster of human rights that will be met. All the 17 goals, and there are 139 targets. Right. So that is the point. And I'm saying it's a principle of the SDGs to leave no one behind. It's not me. And so leaving LGBTI persons who we all know exist in Ghana, and that's why we're bringing legislation, is something we must take into account. That we may stigmatize them, we may end up discriminating, and we may drive their activities underground, and that can really lead to serious medical and health situations for the country. We need to look at that. Right. So now let me look at my honorable member of parliament, James Agaga. See, ordinarily, you should be putting me to trial. Yes. Article 75, let me first start with Article 40, which requires that Ghana respects its international treaties that it has entered into. So, to start with, every treaty which Ghana has ratified ought to be respected in the Committee of Nations. And to the glory of Ghana, we ratified International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, which this bill underpins, in 2000. Remember very well. And the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, we equally ratified the other one too in 2000. Yes, we might not have domesticated it. But at the time when Ghana's constitution, 1992 constitution, was being promulgated or drafted, the framers already had the text of these covenants which were passed by the UN in 1966. They were there. So it is easier for them to have looked at. So if you look at our fundamental human rights principle, chapter 5 and chapter 6, they mirror very closely the two international covenants on civil and political rights and on economic and social rights. Now, to the question, we might not have domesticated it, but it's not late. We can continue to domesticate with time. Late acts like the Juvenile Justice Act, the Children's Act, and all those acts are manifestations of the previous international covenants that we have passed. So it's not late. But I would say now, do I expect Article 33(5) to maybe rope in what is in 278? Is that the question? Yes. Okay. The definition of the committee. You see, I would say, you see, the Parliament, it is left with Parliament now. If Parliament doesn't take steps to indicate what you want, the likelihood is that one day, the Supreme Court, which equally has the power to interpret the Constitution, could interpret Article 33(5) to include what is in 278 of the resolution of the Africa Commission. It's possible. Article 33(5) gives the courts the opportunity to, when urged strongly, to bring clusters of human rights which do not exist in our Constitution from any other democracy where such is practiced. And this is a particular case in which Ghana has ratified the African Charter and is part of the organs of the African Union, which is the African Commission. In fact, there are cases now before the African Commission against the Republic of Ghana. So why not? One day it could be used. So that is what I would...
Commissioner, thank you very much for your answers. Having answered the last question, you are going to be discharged. But before we discharge you, you made a very good statement that probably you would have to engage the committee on the issues of the SGD. We realize that this is something due for long, because ever since you assumed office as the Commissioner for Human Rights, you have not on a single occasion engaged the Parliamentary Committee on Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Committee of Parliament, that you should be working with. But not for our invitation, you wouldn't even have been here. Now that you are coming to a realization that this is a committee that you will have to carry along, I believe strongly you will do the needful. Thank you very much for appearing before the committee.
Actually, Ranking, I'm just being nudged that we actually have an invitation here to engage you on the SDGs this year, and we will do so.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Right, so on this note, Commissioner and your deputies are discharged. We are so grateful to you, and we will be looking forward to you inviting us. We need the education as of yesterday, especially on the SDGs. So the Commissioner and anybody and any group that we had heard are discharged. We would hear the next group would be the National Coalition for Proper Human Rights. And then after that, we'll break for lunch. And when we return from lunch, we will hear the Catholic Bishops' Conference, after which we will hear a coalition of Muslim Organization of Ghana, and then presentation by Network for Women's Rights. Then we will hear Mr. Jacob Osei Yeboah. So we listen to Mr. Moses Fuanen morning, and then we'll break for lunch. There are others that are to come in, so I'll plead with those that we have already heard, if you could actually give us the space for others to come in with the greatest of respect. Coalition.